Okay, so you've done the 6 weeks in Chicago.
Yep.
Is that the point you're sent home?
That's the point I'm sent home. And that's the part where I feel I get to, there's several lows mentally in this process. That was the first low I experienced because the first 6 weeks, 7 weeks of doing all this therapy and, the drugs and infusions, exciting. You're surrounded with all these people. You're doing intense therapy. You are in Chicago. You're
improving.
Yep, you're improving. And, they want you to go out on the weekends to try to, how are you going to navigate a mall after this, Kale? How are you going to go to a restaurant after this, Kale? So they're really trying to push you to not just sit at home and do nothing, which is unfortunately what I decided to do. But when I first came home, when we made that drive home, we got home, we got in the driveway, and when we were in the driveway, I was crying because it was a realization that at that point, like I didn't accomplish what I wanted to accomplish in those 6 weeks, where I thought I was gonna walk out. And a quick story, in that therapy center, there's this grand staircase that leads to the exit, which I think is really funny because you have a bunch of kids in wheelchairs and there's this grand staircase, and all the kids would kind of just, and the lunchroom is right on the bottom of that staircase. You have all these kids looking at this like 25 staircase, like,
Is that meant to be inspiration?
I have no idea. I just feel like it was like, it pissed everyone off, My mom was like, are you serious, But
were you walking at all at that point?
not at that point, no.
Not even, like, were they not trying to get you to walk?
They were trying to, but
Was that on those bars?
that took like 6 months.
Okay.
So by the time I left, those 6-7 weeks, I could like maybe stand with like 3 or 4 people, making sure I didn't just like fall over.
Okay.
So, but going back to when I got home, it was the first time I took into account the mental aspect of, okay, well, like this is life, and what am I going to do about this? And I didn't have a plan for how I was going to, re-enter my life, because those 6-7 weeks, they don't feel like your actual life. You feel like you're in a therapy center doing, working out the entire day.
But this was over the summer period.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I got home in late August, which is when I should have been starting school, but I didn't start school. I didn't go back until October that year, and I was doing remote work where my teachers would send me like assignments, and I wouldn't like write at that point. I wasn't writing. Someone would have to write for me, which made the whole process. Can you imagine I was doing like geometry, and I was like, Mom, like, can you write this equation? Right. It's just like, it was really painful and frustrating. Like, can you draw this triangle? Like, no, you drew it wrong. Erase that,
Oh man, listen, during COVID, I had to do the homeschooling for my daughter, and there were a few moments.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, but you still got back to school within 2 months. So so when you go home, what is the plan from on the medical front? You come in once a week. You come in once a like.
So it's a very slow transition. So the reason they want you to go home is so you can get reintegrated with your community and figure out how you're going to live. How you're going to continue living your life. So those 6 weeks inpatient are done. Then they want you to come back 3 times a week for outpatient. So outpatient therapy. So I would go up like Monday, Tuesday-ish, and go and be there for 3 or 4 days at the same place.
Yeah.
But I would stay in a different part of the hospital where no nurses, no care team was treating me. It was just my mom and I. And at that point, she was doing literally everything for me. She was helping me shower. She was helping me use the bathroom. She was helping me put on my clothes, brush my teeth, all of these things. So,
which you hated. She didn't give a shit because she's your mom.
Right. I was like, well, you adapt to it a little bit.
Yeah.
Right. If you've done that for several months at that point, you're like, okay, Mom, like it's time to shower. Right. It's no longer weird. But yeah, obviously I wanted to like shower on my own.
Yeah.
So when we went back to outpatient therapy, it was still doing the same workouts and stuff like that, where eventually that's where I was able to stand up. I was able to walk in those bars. I had a series of braces on my legs that I worked through. One that was like a full leg brace. And once I graduated from that, I had a shorter brace below my knee. Once I graduated from that, I had a different brace, right? So it was this progression of braces, also a progression of walkers. So like assistive devices, where at first it was like a very big walker that I could put all of my forearm strength into. And so that I wasn't really putting weight through my legs. And then once I, was comfortable with that, then it was, okay, let's do a less assistive walker so that you're forced to put more, weight through your legs. So over that 6 months, I was, I think I was able to walk just a little bit. I was still using my wheelchair to get around. But even then, like I had no arm strength, so I couldn't really like push my wheelchair at all.
Okay, so when you're back at school though in October,
Yeah.
have you got somebody pushing you around at school?
No. I was, well, yes, but I didn't really go to school.
Oh, so you're doing it at home. When did
Yeah.
you go back to school? In
It
school?
would have been the next year, academic
Oh,
year.
okay. So you were doing it when you went back to school. You mean you were doing the homeschooling?
Yeah, I went to school actually to school that sophomore year, like 2 times a year.
What?
But like I went into the school like twice, but I was doing all of my work virtually.
And those 2 times, was it to see friends or actually go to class?
It was like try to go to class, but then it was like I was like not ready for that yet.
How was everyone else that's around you at school?
It was like they were obviously supportive, but it felt like a pity case.
Yeah.
Where it's like,
I get it.
Before I was an athlete, I had an ego to myself, right? I felt like I was, smooth with women, all of these things. And then when I went there, it was just like, oh, hi, buddy. Like,
Yeah.
oh, hi, and I hated that.
Yeah,
I
fuck
thought
that.
it was like, and I had a really good group of friends that came up every single weekend that summer. And they did a really great job of making sure that I, wasn't isolated that summer in Chicago by myself.
Yeah.
And then when I was trying to reintegrate into my school and community, they were really leading that effort in a non-pity way. And I really appreciated that. They treated me like I was still Kale. Because I was still Kale, I was just working through a condition. But everyone else was like, oh,
Yeah, you want them to give you shit, right?
yeah, I just wanted people to like, if I was being a dick, like tell me I'm a dick.
Yeah.
If I'm being an asshole, I'm an asshole. But, I didn't, the looks, it was either the sympathy or pity looks, or it was the complete avoidance
Yeah.
of me. Right. And it was just like, guys, like you used to do XYZ with me. You used to call me over for lunch. You used to want to sit by me in class. And now it's just kind of like, it just was gross, but I feel like that's a natural human response when you see, someone disabled or you see someone in a wheelchair, you're like, oh, but like really all that person just going through a condition that's external, right? It's the physical manifestation of what every other person is going through internally.
Yeah.
Right? Like, so it really bothers me if, let's say, someone lost their brother, right? They're working through that mentally, internally. I was working through it physically, externally, but I'm getting all of the pity. I just wanted to be treated like I had been treated before.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's hard because people sometimes don't know what to do.
Right.
But at the same time, it's like, that's why you need your close buddies around you.
Yeah, you need the close buddies
Yeah.
to like protect you and to be the intermediary
Yeah.
force between people who are not sure what to do. It is tough. And I mean, we were all kids in that high school, right? It's not like we were 20s, 30s. It's kids, and kids don't really always respond the best way. But even now, like if this was to happen, I went to work, I'm sure there would still be coworkers who do the same thing.
Yeah.
I think like my main goal of like what I'm trying to do is like really break down that first like gut feeling of pity when you see someone who's disabled. It's really to just be like, okay, that's a person who's working through something just like we all are. They're still just a person. So I'm going to treat them with decency. I'm not going to look at them in a way of pity, and I'm not going to just avoid looking at them because they're in a chair
Yeah.
or they walk different. right?
Yeah, but there's also the flip side to like the pity is also, and I don't mean this in a condescending way, but they also can then be inspiration for others. That is like something that you will have that you may not want to have or may not
Yeah.
accept, but it will exist.
Yeah, I think about that a lot because people will say that, they'll say, I'm inspiring, or they'll see, an example of that, that I see a lot is like on social media. There'll be like a figure skater or a snowboarder who's like amputated, right? And they're like a professional athlete or something. But everyone's like, oh, that's so inspirational. If that person can do it, then I can do it. So it feels like when people say that, it almost is like they're using that person as an object of like, oh, like that person has it so bad. If they're able to get up and do it, then like so can I. And it feels, I don't know, maybe it is condescending. It's just that person is working through something. They don't really want to be treated like that. They want to be a bro, right? They want to be they want to be in. They don't want to be othered in that way.
Yeah, but I'm going to push back on you a little bit here.
Sure.
Because you did put your Twitter thread out there. So
Sure.
you've told your story.
Yeah.
And there may be a scenario where someone goes through something similar to you.
Yeah.
And they might find that. So like, whilst you might think it's kind of like condescending, there may be another 15-year-old kid who sees this and is like, okay, he started here and he got here.
Yeah.
And
that's who I want to speak to, right?
Good, yeah.
I think it's just people who use it as a way to like get out of bed. Just a regular person who is like, okay, now I'm going to go do the dishes because of that. Like I want my story to help those who are in similar circumstances, obviously, but also to be like educational to the point where people realize, I'm working through something hard, sure, but it's just my story, and I want to help people, but I want to educate, external observers as well.
But look, you might inspire somebody with a shitty example and not even know about it. And I personally don't think that's an issue. And
Sure.
I can see where it's coming from for you because, like, I'm starting to learn part of the journey. Like, it almost feels like in the camp of that pity area.
Yeah,
But-
that's what I'm trying to avoid.
Yeah.
Is the feeling of inspiration out of pity. Right?
Yeah, but I don't think it is inspiration out of pity.
Sure.
I mean, sure, that might happen, but it's like that, what's that? No good deed goes unpunished.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's from Wicked.
Yeah. So like, if any kind of goodness that comes out of it, like, just take it, I would say. But like, who am I to tell you?
Yeah. It's definitely, so if people are interested in it, it's called inspiration porn. So it's essentially using others as you would use, in the sexual porn standpoint. It's, I'm going to use these two bodies in front of me to receive gratification. In this standpoint is I'm going to use, an image of this 16-year-old amputee or this 16-year-old quadriplegic as a way to be motivated to go on with my day. Essentially, that is the it's I guess a theory.
Yeah, and I guess you know it more because you're living it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So you said when you got back, you were going through like a depressive episode.
Yeah.
What was going on there?
So it was really just when I got back, I was not sure what I was going to do, how I was going to handle myself, how I was going to reintegrate myself, because I wasn't going to school. And sure, some people were coming over, that core friend group was coming over sometimes, but really I was just sitting in my room just by myself. And if you just sit in your room by yourself for long enough, right,
Yeah.
you begin to spiral. And I think what I needed more of is I needed people to tell me, Kale, like, go live your life. Like, we're going to figure out a way that if you want to go to the taco restaurant down the road, we're going to get you to the taco restaurant. My fear was I would be a burden on others if I wanted to go to the taco restaurant, right? Because at that time I had a wheelchair. So we would need to find a way to put the wheelchair into the car, make sure I was in the car comfortably, When we got to the space, we needed to make sure I got out of the car into the wheelchair. Then what if the taco restaurant only had stairs and there was no ramp into the taco restaurant? Are you going to carry me up the stairs and then carry my wheelchair up the stairs? What if the door frame is not wide enough for my wheelchair because I had a large wheelchair because I'm 6'3"? What if I could not physically get my wheelchair in? And then what if I got into the restaurant and then all the tables were too close to each other? So I had to interrupt all the parties to move them so that I could get to a table. And then what if I need to use the restroom and I have at the time, an elaborate way of using the restroom and I can't get into the restroom and the stall that I need to get into is too small for my wheelchair, so I can't even use the restroom at the restaurant. All of these things cycling through my head, I'm just going to stay home.
Yeah, I get that.
Right.
Okay. So really, like, a big next part is to be able to get beyond the wheelchair. Do you ever still use one?
I use a scooter.
Okay.
I would say the next part is not. The next part is is capitalizing on the opportunity that I didn't really know of how much function can I regain.
Yeah.
And that's nobody knows. It's not like the doctor says, this is your endpoint. You'll be able to walk with a limp and your hands will somewhat work. No one knows.
Okay, so it might have been that you cannot get back to a place of walking.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it could have easily have just been like, that was it.
But you have that limited window.
You have a window, but the window is from academic journals. Who really knows what's happening?
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
I would say it's not to. My goal was to get to walking, but I think really what it is trying to capitalize on the opportunity to regain function physically. Mentally is what I completely ignored for several years, is the reintegrating and living life, right? So even though I would always find an excuse, even when I could use a wheelchair and then I could walk sort of with a limp or with a cane or with a walker, mentally I would still find an excuse not to do it.
Okay.
I would be like, oh, maybe it's too far from where the car is parked. Maybe the bathroom won't work for me. Maybe people are going to want to do other activities after, and I'm not going to be strong enough to do it. So it's the mental component that I think I didn't take into account, but is really the most important part, is having the right attitude, more of a can-do attitude. Like, I can go and do these things. I don't have to stay at home, and we will figure it out. I will surround myself with people who will take care of me and look after me. And I didn't have that for, really years. I was really on my own, from a friend group standpoint. When you're on your own from a friend group standpoint, having all of these supposed challenges, which are real, but really are more fear, when you have someone who can help you through that, which I have now, then you can do all of these things and gain confidence.